Hey folks, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. We're out in the shop early this morning because it's been getting almost into the hundreds this week. So if we're going to work in the shop, we need to do it early because this metal building turns into an oven later on in the day. So we're going to do a little special project today. Stick around with us. We'll get her done. So what we are making is a cast iron barbecue spatula out of an old skillet. And we got an old skillet from the dealer downtown, his little antique store. It was fairly cheap, maybe 10 bucks or something like that. So we're going to use that to make our spatula. Here's our skillet that we're going to use. You can see it's got a number 8 on the handle. And that tells you it's 8 inches along the bottom here. If there's a 10, it's a 10-inch skillet, and so on and so on. So we're going to take this old skillet, and to start with, we're going to mark it, and we're going to cut the sides off of this skillet first, and then we'll cut the end off, making a spatula. So let's get this thing out. We'll get our ruler out. We're going to make this thing about 4 inches wide, I believe, maybe 3.5. We'll see once we get our markings on here, see what it looks like. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut a straight line from here to here to here with our 4.5-inch grinder. So let's get her done. We got our measurements. Basically what we did, we measured from here to here. On the other side, it's exactly 11 inches. So we turned the skillet over, put our framing square on here, measured 5.5, which gives us our center. And then we lined it up with the center of this. And then we could draw our straight edge. And then we went 2 inches to either side of that line. And then we just kind of traced this down here. We're going to do a little bit more here later, but that's good for now. And then we used our straight edge right here, our square, to get that. We're just going to cut this off wherever the flat bottom meets here. And then, of course, later on we'll sand all this up. I use a metal marking pencil. I love these pencils. They work so much better than soapstone. Soapstone, if you have a greasy surface like this, sometimes will not mark. But this metal marking pencil will mark even if it's a little greasy. So let's get our 4.5-inch grinder out. We'll get cutting this. Right, we've got the basic shape cut out. I apologize to you cast iron fans who cringed at the sight of me cutting this apart. But now we're going to address the shoulders here. We're going to kind of follow this angle and kind of run this kind of curved here so it looks more natural. And then we're going to get our sander out and get this thing cleaned up. But let's round those corners first. There's our corners rounded. We'll dress those up with the belt sander to make them match each other, both sides. But that's basically what we're looking for right there, folks. Is our cast iron spatula. So let's get her cleaned up. There's the pieces of our skillet. So you can kind of see where it comes out of. Okay, we got our rough profile done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bevel on the front of this. I don't want it completely sharp. I just want a little bevel so things like that you scoop can come up over this lip a lot easier. So we'll get that done. All right, you can see we've kept it fairly straight all the way across. So we're going to do some hand sanding on this with like a sanding block to get all of our deep scratches out somewhat. And we'll do that all the way around. And we're going to leave these corners sharp, but not like razor sharp. We'll go around the corner just a little bit with that block, just to soften that edge to where you're not going to cut yourself on it. But say you got like a Blackstone grill and you need to get into the corner to scrape, that's what these corners are good for, because most of your spatulas you buy downtown have rounded corners on them, and they don't get into those corners really well. So let's get our hand sanding done, and then we'll be ready to re-season all these bare metal edges. Got her all sanded up. We've got all of the rough edges off of the outside. So now we need to take this into house and season it up. And I'm thankful for that, because it's getting hot as blazes out here already. You can probably tell that it's pretty warm. So what I'm going to do though, since I'm already seasoning this, I have another project I need to season as well. Now this cool little oval plancha I found at an auction and bought it. It's embossed with like the Tabasco brand on here. Pretty cool, I thought, because I'm a big fan of Tabasco and they go way back. So all I need to do with this is knock some of the surface rust off, and to do that I'm just going to use the wire wheel on our bench grinder over here. And then we can season this as well while we're doing that. Two birds with one stone. Now you may be asking why the blowtorch. My ancestors back in the day, they told you if you had an old cast iron pan that was all rusted out, or if you found one or whatever, you just throw it in the fire. If you had a fire pit or fireplace, you just throw your cast iron skillet in there and while the fire's burning, and then pull it out when the fire's done. And it burns off all the old crusty bits or whatever that are on the skillet and gets it ready to season. It cleans up really well. Plus any rust particles that are left on there that you've like sanded off, they're so small that the torch just kind of incinerates them and burns them up. I don't know if you saw some of the little orange little sparks flying off, but that stuff just burns up and goes away. So we are ready to season these things, and thank goodness, because it's hot. All right, we're back in the house. Before I do anything else, it's shower time, because I am dripping sweat and smell like a workshop. So I'll be back in a minute. All right, folks. Feel like a new man now, boy, I tell you. So we're back in the kitchen, and we're going to get to seasoning these two cast iron pieces. Now, when you're seasoning cast iron, a lot of people will tell you to use oil, but you got to be careful, because vegetable oil, if you use it to season cast iron, will get sticky. And you don't want things to be sticky with cast iron. You should always use an animal fat, like lard or something like that. Stray away from bacon grease, because it's got a little salt in it, and that might cause you some issues. But let me show you what we're going to do. So I took out a couple ribeye steaks this morning, because we're going to have some carnitas tacos for dinner, some carne asada tacos. So I always do like a princess, I call it a princess trim on them, because Kelly will not eat meat with fat on it. So I always carve all the fat off of the meat before I cook it, or after I cook it. Just depends. So I'm going to take all these pieces of fat, beef fat, and I'm going to render this down. And we'll pull it out once the fat has rendered, and then we'll have the liquid fat to use on our two cast iron pieces over here. And then we'll put them in the oven for an hour at 400 degrees, but we'll do that here in a minute. Like I said, we have the bacon grease over here from a recipe we did the other day, but we don't want any salt. That's another reason why I was doing this project today, because I knew I would have this fat to use for seasoning. Who said men can't multitask? I'm killing like 3 birds with one stone. Got our rendered fat here, plenty to do what we're going to do. You can see all of our little pieces here. Now, if you put a little seasoning on these babies, those are tasty little morsels right there, unless you're Kelly. But that'll cost you $10 in a fancy restaurant. They're called lardons. They usually take like the big strip of fat off a pork chop or like a New York steak, and they'll sear it and season it and serve it as an appetizer. Now, Doc, if you're watching, I'm not going to eat all these. Some of them are going to be doggy treats, I promise. Got our 2 items coated with oil. We just used a basting brush, put a light coat on all of that. Now, I'm not going to season them on this aluminum sheet. I'm going to put these upside down. This one doesn't really matter. But if you have a pan, it needs to be upside down so any grease or oil that wants to run off can. And this foil pan will be underneath it to catch any drips. So our oven is up to 400 degrees. So we're going to get these babies in. And then we're going to let them season for an hour. While we're waiting for that to get done in our oven, let's talk a little bit about cast iron. If you remember your grandma's cast iron skillet, it wasn't rough on the bottom. It had a smooth surface, and you could cook eggs, anything you wanted in it, and it would not stick. The more modern cast iron that you buy, and I'm not going to mention the company's name, but it's one of the biggest companies making cast iron that you see in all the, like the outdoor stores and all that. The bottom's inside cooking surface of their pan is not smooth, it's rough. And I think the biggest reason for that is it takes time and it takes money to surface the inside of that by sanding it and polishing it. And if you can imagine over everything that they make, that would get quite costly. But there is a company that's still making cast iron here in the USA, and they give you that polished surface like your grandma's pan used to have. And when you season that pan and you keep it oiled, it'll become like your best nonstick pan. You won't believe it. Now, the company's called Smithy. It's I'll put it here on the screen so you can see it, the link and all that. And I'll put a link in the description. The one on the screen won't actually be a link, but it'll be their name. Very well-made cast iron pans. They've taken it upon themselves to make the best pan they can make, like the old school pans. They're not sponsoring this video, but they're just absolutely beautiful pans. They're pricey, I will warn you, but a good cast iron pan is something that's going to last a lifetime. It's like a legacy thing that you could do for like a wedding gift or something like that. Would be a really cool thing. And as long as people take care of them the right way, they'll last forever. That you could hand them down through generations, but they've got to have that smooth cooking surface on the inside. I've bought those cheaper pans, and they're almost impossible to cook in. Like you try to fry an egg in it or whatever, unless you have a 1/4-inch deep pan of oil where it's almost deep frying your egg, it's going to stick. So all cast iron is not created equal. Now, I don't have one of those cool high-dollar pans, but I got a huge collection of my grandmother's and my mother's old cast iron. We actually haven't even pulled it out yet from our move because there's just no room in the kitchen, but we plan on doing that soon. But they all have that nice smooth bottom already. Brandy, Ruby. We got treats. Good girls. Aren't those amazing? Good girl, Ruby. Those are good, huh, Brandy? Yeah. I know those were yummy, but they're all gone. Gotta go out of the kitchen. Out. Good girls. Well, I tell you, the internet is a scary place. I started editing some of the previous little clips that we did and looking at my social media briefly. All over my social media is cast iron ads now. Crazy. All right, our pieces are done and out of the oven. You can see on our spatula here, this is one of these smooth bottom pans. That's like absolutely slick, smooth. Feels like a non-stick pan right there. Now this one is an example of the rough bottom pan that you would get from that other company that I mentioned. Well, I didn't mention their name, but just like the other company, theirs are probably made in that country also. But the inside of their pans look like this. This is the outside of this pan. We're not going to cook in this pan anyway. This is pretty much just a decoration or a wall hanger, just a cool thing to have. But our spatula came out nice. Super cool. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed our cool little project that we did here. That's going to be put to good use for years. Good conversation piece, too. So, till next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. Come back and see us here at Mark Kelly Farm. We'd love to have you.